everyone, and welcome to the Recorded Future session at Microsoft Ignite. My name is Adrian Porcescu, and I'm a senior manager for integrations with inside the R&D team for Recorded Future. And today we're going to talk about the integrations with Microsoft Azure Sentinel. Before we start, a few words about what Recorded Future is. So our goal is to transform all sources into actionable intelligence, and we play a very important role inside the field of cyber threat intelligence. And the way Recorded Future does things is very tailored on the intelligence production lifecycle. And if we look at this graph, we see on the left the collection part, and we perform technical collection. We do collection from open web sources. We do automated collection from dark web sources. We ingest proprietary technical sources, and of course, client-owned sources. And on top of that, we have our own insect team that performs research and feeds those pieces inside our collection engine. Once the data is collected, we go and apply what we call the security intelligence graph, which means we structure the data using NLP in a various list of languages natively. We apply analytics on top of identified entities using our ontology, and of course the events that we detect through the structuring mechanism. Once we analyze those, we are able to provide things like risk scores for indicators, for vulnerabilities. For companies, we also provide things like trends, real-time alerts, and of course, advanced queries. And once all of this goes through the security intelligence graph, it is being disseminated further to our clients through the portal and the mobile app, the browser extension, and of course, the API and the integrations that we are going to focus on today. Inside Microsoft Azure, because we do have this API that we use to deliver and to make our data available, inside Microsoft Azure, we built in the Logic App layer this custom connector that is a wrapper of our API and enables all of the microservices that we have available on our API are made available inside Microsoft Azure. And what are the actions that are part of this custom connector? We are talking about the capability of downloading Recorded Future bulk datasets of indicators for both prevention and detection purposes. These are not just simple feeds, these are contextualized data sets, and we will see later on how parts of the data set can be leveraged and the context can be used for correlation and more advanced response. We also have actions that are enabling enrichment, and we do that for a various list of indicators. We talk about enriching IPs, domains, URLs, vulnerabilities, and also hashes. We do have actions that are connected to our SOAR API, which performs bulk enrichment of indicators. And of course, as mentioning earlier, Recorded Future has or provides alerts in real time based on the sources that we're harvesting and the data that we are structuring, which means that we are enabling our customers to pull those alerts inside Sentinel and alert inside Sentinel based on the Recorded Future alerts. But we will see, later on how these action blocks will be leveraged inside Logic App Playbooks. If we think about a high-level picture on how the data will be flowing inside Azure from Recorded Future, you can consider this as representing our API, and we talk about running the custom connector that is already published and available publicly on all regions of Microsoft Azure, leveraging those actions inside the Logic Apps Depending on the action being used from the connector, we can, of course, run and import data sets like the security control feeds and the risk list we will be talking later on inside the Graph Security API of Microsoft Azure, STI indicators, and then, of course, based on how they're imported, leveraging them further on in Microsoft Defender or Microsoft Azure Sentinel. Through the enrichment actions in the connector from Microsoft Azure, analysts can run playbooks, can run logic apps, and use those actions to be able to enrich the indicators with additional context that will help them in their analysis. Of course, through that context, we can also provide links to our portal in case the analysts do want to pivot outside Sentinel. It's not mandatory, it's just if they want to, they can pivot to the Recorded Future portal. We provide the means and the URLs to do that in order to get access to all the context that we might have harvested and is available around a certain indicator that they are analyzing. Now, what that means is that really Recorded Future provides security intelligence, and that enables and enhances three main areas if we think about the security operation lifecycle. And we talk about prevention, we talk about detection, and of course, responding to alerts and incidents that are inside Sentinel. And at the end of the day, we're talking about leveraging intelligence with the purpose of maximizing the value of existing security investments and also maximizing the capabilities in these three main areas: prevention, detection, and response. For that, and just to make things a little bit more practical for this session, I'm going to pivot and talk a little bit about the playbooks that we have published on GitHub. These are all residing on the playbook section from Azure Sentinel on Microsoft GitHub. And I wanted to focus on these three areas and talk a little bit about them, but also show you how you can import these playbooks and immediately leverage them in your environment. So that being said, let's jump and switch to a little bit of a demo about those playbooks, how you can implement them, and what you should be expecting when implementing them. So as mentioned, we provide a various list of different data sets that you can import. The playbooks are just few examples focused on specific data sets with the purposes that we are going to discuss, but I will show you that you can start expanding from these examples and build your own with different other data sets provided by Recorded Future that you could leverage in order to enable different functions or enhance different functions. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the Recorded Future IP command and control security feed. When we talk about security control feeds, these are the data sets from Recorded Future that are suited for blocking. We are vetting these through our own traffic, and we only recommend these ones to be used for prevention purposes. And we do have other data sets that are recommended and suited for detection purposes. You will see here, once you will go into the GitHub sections and you will check the playbooks, that they contain a description. They allow you to pivot to get more information from our support site about what is the data set that we are importing here. And you will also see that we have provided, according to the standards of Microsoft Azure GitHub, we provided the links for deploying this. So for you to be able to import this is as simple as clicking on deploy to Azure links, which I am going to do right now. And once you click on this, you will just be asked to select the resource group in which to deploy this playbook, and then just click review and create, and you will be already deploying this playbook. One thing to be mentioned here, and I want to bring this up because it's an important mechanism on how Azure works. You will see here that you actually have two playbooks for one use case. Nothing to worry about in regards to consumption. The reason why we created these use cases as two different playbooks is because this is the most efficient way to minimize the consumption of resources at the level of Azure. Um, we are using the so-called batching mechanism inside Logic Apps, which enables us to send indicators in batches and to really minimize the time for running the playbooks. And this is why we recommend to import first the second one. Um, of course, the details are presented in the description, but because of the batching mechanism, you will need to import the second one and then the first one. The first one being the one that imports the indicators from Recorded Future, the second one being the one that deploys the indicators inside Azure environment. And this way, you will be unable to import, thousands of, even tens of thousands of indicators. Sometimes we do have lists that are containing big numbers of indicators. Reason why we provided multiple, so you can choose depending on what are your needs. But we had to use the batching mechanism just to optimize the import of such a large amount of indicators without affecting your costs, really. So that being said, once you click on it and you deploy it, you will end up with, a Logic app, and the only thing you'll have to do before saving and running this and leaving it to deploy the indicators would be to provide a connection to the playbook. One connection will be needed for the Recorded Future block. When we talk about connection here, we talk about an API key. And another connection will be needed for the Azure environment. You will be required to log in with a user to be able to, that has rights to create those TI indicators and to access the Security Graph API as a writer. Once these aspects will be saved, immediately you can save, you can run the playbook. It will be running automatically by default once per day. We recommend for the SCFs to keep one per day, but for the detection ones that we will talk later, you can change this to a more often interval. We update our data sets in real time. So for IPs, we recommend usually 1 hour for detection, 2 hours for domains and URLs, and once per day for hashes and vulnerabilities. But for these ones, for prevention, for the security control feeds, we do recommend you to use 1 day, the default one. Of course, if you want to expand from this example, you will have other 2 security control feeds for blocking purposes, one with domains, one with URLs. If you'd like to develop from this another playbook that will be importing other indicators for blocking inside Defender. What makes these indicators suited and, targeted to Defender is the way we're creating the TI indicators. So you will see that this playbook that imports the SCFs, when it creates the indicators inside Azure, it will have as a target product Microsoft Defender ATP, and the action would be block. It does support multiple actions like alert also inside Microsoft Defender ATP, but as I imported an SCF, which is suited for prevention, and we are talking about the prevention use case, here I am importing, in this case, I am pushing them as, Microsoft Defender indicators suited for blocking. When we talk about the detection playbooks, and here we have 2 examples. One is actively communicating CNC, so importing IPs that we have vetted and we have seen active and communicating as CNCs for you to correlate against your telemetry. We have another example with domains that are known as CNC DNS names. Once you import these ones, the difference here is that, first of all, in the block from Recorded Future in the action is not importing an SCF, but a security control feed, but we're talking about importing a risk list, how we call them, or a data set suited for detection. And you will see that the moment this indicator is created, the target product now is Azure Sentinel, and the action in this case is alerting. So once these indicators, this playbook will be saved and the indicators will be created, what we are talking about is being able to immediately see these indicators as threat intelligence indicators inside the log analytics, right? So they will be immediately and automatically pushed as TI indicators. As you can see, they are known internally already as the native threat intel indicators. You will see that they are created with the indicator in the dedicated fields, but we also provide together with that a risk score, which is mapped on the confidence score. And we also provide the context. So it's not just the indicator and the risk score, but we are talking about the entire evidence field mapped into the additional information, which will give you the reasoning of why something is known as malicious or it has a certain confidence or risk score. And you will see all the evidence that actually contributed to providing that score to the indicator. What does this mean? Why is it important that an indicator is created as a TI indicator? The reason why is that important is because Microsoft provides in the analytics for Microsoft Azure Sentinel a set of rule templates. And if we look at some of those templates, we will see that some of them are actually leveraging threat intelligence. As you can see, they're called TI map, and of course, mapping those to different telemetry or different types of logs or events collected by the SIEM from the internal devices. So having these templates and having recorded future indicators pushed as threat intelligence indicators, it means that whenever you will be enabling one of these templates, the recorded future indicators will be automatically leveraged in those correlation rules. And on top of that, of course, you're able to build your own correlation rules. And here are some examples of building those correlation rules with, for example, different scores and different priorities based on scores. So here I have a detection rule that is correlating against the actively communicating CNC, but it has medium priority because it focuses on the ones with high score. And I am, for example, giving a lower priority to an incident or to an event that is coming out of the correlation with the actively communicating CNC, but with the IPs that were whitelisted or with a low score as reported by recorded future, right? So even from the correlation and the the initial steps before coming up and outputting an incident, you're able to set priorities based on the confidence score and really the risk score and the context that recorded future provides. And also if you want to index or you want to check all of those threat intelligence indicators from recorded future and an aggregated view of them and the others, you can leverage the new function of Microsoft Azure Sentinel, which is the threat intelligence sections, where you can see all of the intelligence indicators that you have imported. Now, that being said, of course, using these indicators, the workflow that will make most sense here for detection purposes is really just 3 steps, right? Based on what we've just talked. We're talking about running a playbook that we provided some examples for in the first stage and importing the indicators, making sure that we push them as native threat intelligence indicators inside Microsoft Azure, making sure that we provide additional context so it can be used and leveraged also in the detection step, but also inside the response stage after the alert has been generated. Based on these indicators, we can create correlation rules that are custom, or you can leverage the TI mapping templates that Microsoft makes available inside Microsoft Azure. And once that is set, the result would be that you come up with alerts and incidents that are sometimes already prioritized if you did, as I showed in the example, and created multiple based on different score bandwidths or different contexts. So you're now able to detect, and you enabled additional detection capabilities based on our data sets. Now, on top of that, of course, we are talking about enrichment. So sometimes you might end up with incidents that are not coming from recorded feature correlations. So you don't know exactly what recorded feature would know about those indicators inside those alerts. So for that purpose, as I was mentioning initially, recorded feature has provided enrichment actions in the connector. So what that allows us to do is really to create playbooks. And as I mentioned, we provided an example for that type of playbook as well, an enrichment playbook. As you can see, it doesn't use the batching mechanism, so it will not have two logic apps. It's just one. But the idea of this playbook is to run, of course, only on an incident, on top of an incident, manual or automatically, depending on how you desire that. But the idea is to connect to the incident or the alert, take the indicators inside, and then use recorded future block for enrichment. In this case, in the example, we're talking about IP enrichment. And to push back in the comment of the incidents, the additional context that might be leveraged by the analyst in his decisions. If we think about the workflow, we start with the alert. We look at the details of that incident or that alert, and here we have the playbook section. You have the playbooks that are available for enrichment, basically the ones that start with a block when an alert is being generated. That's how the initial block in the playbook is called. And once they run, they connect to the recorded feature API, and they bring the additional context. In this case, as an example, we brought the risk score, the reasons, the evidence, the rules, and the capability for the analyst to pivot to recorded feature platform and access all the historical data that we might be having available related to this indicator, including related threat actors, things like reports that were written by recorded feature INSIG group that are involving this indicator. And as I mentioned initially, this is not mandatory. If you want to involve this action of pivoting to recorded feature portal, if not, you can leverage the connector and the actions to pull the data inside Sentinel and use it here inside the portal that you're used to. Now, before we finish, just a quick summary. So we talked about the recorded feature connector, which enables various actions inside logic apps. We talk about downloading bulk datasets called SCFs. We talk about downloading bulk datasets called risk lists, and of course, enrichment actions and enrichment using the SOAR API, which is enrichment in bulk. All of these enabling various use cases in areas like prevention through Microsoft Defender ATP. We talk about detection using Sentinel, and enrichment, of course, using the SOAR capabilities of Sentinel and leveraging the logic apps for enrichment and automation. That being said, I want to thank you for joining the session. Of course, invite you to access these links to get more information about the recorded feature integration with Azure Sentinel and Azure in general, more details about the recorded feature custom connector. And what I want to invite you is to try those playbooks that we provided as in examples, start building from them, involve, other lists and other data sets in your detection and prevention capabilities. And of course, leverage us. We are experts in the field of threat intelligence, and I think we can work together in order to enhance your capabilities in prevention, detection, and incident response, and really, get to the point of reaching that level of performing security operations in an intelligence-led way. Thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward to speaking with you in other sessions. And of course, for any questions or any additional details, please feel free to contact us um, directly through the contacts that we are making available publicly. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you a very nice day. Bye-bye.